Hello, I'm Aditya, and I'm a rising freshman at Cupertino High School. For my main project, I decided to build a 3-joint robotic arm that uses object detection to pick up food on a plate and then move it to your mouth. So for my first milestone was to get 4 servos to work with the Raspberry Pi. And just for a quick demo, as soon as the program starts, you can see the servos moving back and forth, and it does this around 3 times before stopping. So currently my circuit is composed of just a Raspberry Pi and 4 servo motors. So the servo motors have 3 pins each, one meant to be connected to an external power source, the other one to be connected to ground, and the last one to be connected to a GPIO pin. So a GPIO pin is a general purpose input-output pin, and the Raspberry Pi has multiple GPIO pins. And that's pretty much it for the hardware side. But on the software side, the Raspberry Pi is its own computer and uses a Linux operating system, and that gives you a lot of freedom in choosing what IDE you want to use to control the servos. So I went with Thonny Python, which is a pre-downloaded program on the Raspberry Pi itself, and that simplified the uploading process quite a bit. So I originally had used the Arduino to control the 4 servo motors, but then I noticed the camera that would be used for the object detection requires a heavy operating system, which the Arduino simply doesn't have. So I decided to use the Raspberry Pi to solve that problem. So I had the Arduino used to control the servos and the Raspberry Pi, and I tried to connect the Arduino and the Raspberry Pi together. And after multiple days of failed attempts, I tried to use the pins on the Raspberry Pi itself to control the servos, and that ended up working really well. And so through all these experiences, I was able to learn the underworkings of the Raspberry Pi, as well as the operating system and how it works, and lastly, how the Raspberry Pi communicates with other devices. I faced many struggles when transitioning from the traditional Arduino to the Raspberry Pi. There are 2 vastly different platforms, and getting servos to work with the Raspberry Pi was a whole different experience than getting the servos to work with the Arduino, and I learned a lot through those experiences. Now that I have my 4 servos working with just the Raspberry Pi, I'm ready to take the next step. And the next step for me would be to get a structure of the arm up and running and connect the servos to a series of wood pieces in order to pick up food on a piece of plate. Thank you.